Hello everybody, it's Ollie Epsom here on the Drawing Board 82 channel. Now today I'm going to be introducing a news item that was made in the year 1988 when I was 6 years old. And there's a couple of reasons I'm going to show it to you, not least of all, I'm in it. Those of you who want to jump straight into the action can click this link here. And if you don't want to jump straight in the action, you can bear with me for a couple of minutes while I provide some background information and context to what the news item is, why it was filmed, how it's filmed, and to some extent how I feel about it now, watching it almost 40 years later. As you know, I haven't put anything up on YouTube for a while. I would love to tell you that this is because I'm just so busy doing important things in my daily life, but the reality is I have quite a boring job, and that's led to a very low level of energy. It's fair to say in the last year I've done a fair bit though. I mean, got married, moved back from Taiwan, built a lot of things out of wood, badly, changed jobs, stumbled into a house renovation project that I can't really afford. And I've also accidentally written one book and I'm half through writing another. Now, interestingly, it is that second book that's never going to get published, which is a sort of story of home education as far as it concerned me and the effect it had on me and what I think about it, led me to what I'm about to show you. Lacking as I did in energy, a couple of weeks ago I threw down my tools in the office here where I spend most of my time working and went downstairs. My wife was away, so I found myself flicking through Netflix. I stumbled across the 2014 film The Imitation Game, and it is purportedly about the Allies' attempt to break the Enigma code during the Second World War. As I watched Benedict Cumberbatch and Keira Knightley proceed to wipe their asses with any notion of historical accuracy, I found myself asking, am I living my best life? And the answer, of course, was no. So I stood up, went into the kitchen, got myself a can of Tennent's, sank most of it, returned to the sofa and attempted to continue watching the film. Asking myself the same question, in a few minutes I arrived, unsurprisingly, at the same answer. So I turned off the TV, went upstairs and determined to do some research on my book. And that is how I landed across the video that you're about to see, which I haven't actually seen for some 40 years since it was made. So my parents, as you know, moved to a house in Newport in Ireland in the year 1982, and that's where I grew up for the first 14 or so years of my life. Now, I didn't go to school and I was educated at home, and my mum was quite active in the community, such as it was at the time, and she knew everybody in the area who was doing it. This caught the attention of RTE, Ireland's national television service, who determined that they'd do a short piece about it for an evening news channel. This happened in 1988, as you can see in the video title. Now, before they came to our house, they went to the Brennans in Kilthemagh, who you can see behind me now on the screen. Now, they would have been friends of my parents at the time, and I spent many, many hours in their living room. But it was a long day, it was winter. By the time they'd finished filming at the Brennans, it was dark by the time they arrived at our house. We were all knackered. Vividly remember it because they came with about 10 cars, portable generators, lights, cameras, the whole works. There was a lot of kerfuffle. Now, as they set up, and particularly when my parents began to speak to the camera, it hit me even then at the age of 6 that the whole thing was a performance. It was fake. It wasn't real. We were wearing clothes we didn't usually wear. The furniture had been moved from one part of the room to the other for various reasons. On the table where my brother and I are working later in the video, you can see it's piled high with textbooks and pencils and crayons and things that we just wouldn't have had, because anything more than one item would have been excessive and we probably would have been shouted at for that. The accents that my parents had are sort of quite highly inflected in this video, and that was resonated with me even at the time, because I remember they just didn't speak like that. Now, that overriding impression of fakery and performance has stuck with me ever since, and is the reason really that I'm presenting this video, because it has brought up some conflicting feelings in me watching it nearly 40 years after the event. As you know, and as I've never made a secret of, I have very serious issues with home education in general, and I have extremely serious issues with my particular experience of it in particular. I've always said, and I will always maintain, that if I have succeeded at all beyond my sort of innate privilege as a white guy born in Europe, if I've succeeded at all, it is very much in spite of, not because of, home education. I've been saying that for years, and I'm very unlikely to change my opinion on that. 90% of what you read about home education is spoken by parents. It's not spoken by people who've been through it or come out the other end, because in my experience they generally don't come out the other end very well, and I've met almost nobody who went through it who has anything positive to say about it, other than perhaps they had a relatively free childhood. Now, all of what you're hearing in this video with my parents saying we could go to school if we wanted to, for example, was complete nonsense, because first of all, we didn't know anything about school other than what they told us, and second of all, what they told us was that school was a terrible, terrible place. Going to school was a threat in our house. You know, you don't do what we tell you and you'll end up going to school. So we were terrified of it. There was never an option for us to do that. So there is another side to this, and it's a side that's not actually captured in this film for fairly obvious reasons when you consider the context in which it was filmed and the time in which it was made, and that's that my parents were extremely progressive. So the vast majority of people that I know and have met and spoken to that look into home education or do it, particularly if there are colonious brethren from over the Atlantic Ocean, are religious nut jobs who are convinced that their invisible friend in the sky cares what you do with your genitals and is terminally short of cash. And my parents were the absolute opposite of that. They were staunch atheists. I was raised as a staunch atheist. In our household there was no sexism, there was no racism, there was no misogyny, there was no homophobia. People of all colours, creeds, races and orientations visited us regularly throughout my childhood. My parents' attitudes and what rubbed off on me from them were light years ahead of the locals in Ireland at the time, and compare very favourably with the most enlightened people of today, and that's something that I'm very proud of them for, and I'm actually quite grateful for. In spite of all my other issues with home education, I think that is something that they can stand up and be very, very proud of, and they'll have no argument from me about it. Anyway, that's probably enough prattling on from me. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. Let's watch it together.
Claire Webber and Nigel Epsom and their family are about 30 miles further west, outside Newport, County Mayo. Claire and Nigel, how did it come about that you're educating the children at home?
It started in England. Monica, our eldest daughter, was unhappy in school, and we weren't very happy with the education she was getting, and we decided that we'd take her out of school and teach her ourselves, which we did with support from the education authorities. And essentially it continued from there. When the boys got to that age, we decided that we'd teach them ourselves at home. And when we moved to Ireland, we just continued doing it in the same way as we always had done.
Well, Claire, have you had any help at all from the authorities here then?
No, we haven't. But then I haven't been out of my way to go to them either. I have asked the Department of Education to define education, but we haven't so far had a reply.
Well, have you had any objection then, on the other hand?
No, no objection at all.
Now, how do you feel it's working out with the boys here?
Well, it's happy and it's relaxed, and they're learning. And I want them to be happy about learning. I don't want them to be put off learning by having something drummed into them that they don't want to learn. So they're doing very well, as far as I'm concerned.
And how do you work out your day? Do you have a timetable of some sort?
No, we don't really have a timetable, but if we're going to do something formal in the way of maths or English perhaps, then it will tend to be in the morning, because that's when they are at their brightest. And because we get up very early, and towards the end of the day they're getting too tired to do anything really formal. But it is not geared to any particular time. In fact, it might also be at the weekends that we do something, if that's what they're interested in at the time.
Claire, do you think that there's anything they're missing out on by not being at school?
Yes, one of the things they are certainly missing out on is the socialisation, and we have tried to counter that. There are various families around with whom we meet very regularly for them to be in contact with other children, and in addition to that they go to swimming and dancing, so they are seeing children an awful lot of the time.
And what sort of subjects do you cover then?
Well, obviously we cover the 3 R's basically, but we also cover things that they may be interested in: geography, local history, sewing, cooking, gardening, nature study, science, engineering, anything that takes their interest and fancy, and we try to follow it through. So that covers virtually anything around them, especially things outside, outside in the garden or around in the house, or if I'm working on the car, they come and help me, or if Claire's doing the garden or whatever. Whatever they want to do, they follow through.
Up to the age of 5, the parents are considered the most important people in their lives, and I don't consider that suddenly, that the day they reach their 5th birthday, that should change.
Well, you're a qualified teacher. Do you think that makes a difference?
I don't think it does make a difference, no. In fact, in some ways it could make it harder, because I might be trying to inflict my training on them, which isn't always right either. My training's for having children in a class of 30 or 40, and I have them here on their own, and that is completely different kettle of fish altogether.
Now, Monica was taught by you at home, and now she's in a secondary school. How did she find that, adjusting to that?
She decided to go back to school when she was 11. We had always said if she wanted to go back to school, then she would go back to school. And she is happy with the company at school. And she's just settling down to the fact that she has to sit 10 exams at the end of the year. And she's doing fairly well. So having her at home doesn't seem to have done much damage to her. She's sort of average in the class at school now.
Well, Nigel, do you have any doubts at all that you're doing the right thing?
No, I have no doubts at all for Claire and myself, with our children, that we're doing the right thing. It works for us with the children, and that's all I can say. For other people it would be different.